Hi, it's John from Crafts by John UK. Today I'm going to show you how I've made this beautiful card. It says, wishing you a happy birthday and many happy returns for the year ahead. You can see the text here is in blue ink. I've stamped that in blue, but the main body of the card, this beautiful rose and the accompanying design behind it is stamped in black. The background I've made using a Gelli Plate. So you can see we have this beautiful blend of colours from a kind of light blue down to a yellow, and then we have green splats all over it as well. And this is multi-layers, so I've done a blend with a brayer on a jelly mat, and then I've also used acetate to blot the green on, and then lifted the green with a distress sprayer using water. The stamp that I've used is a beautiful All Create stamp. It's number... It's sent with love, that's the name of it, and the number is 831. The sentiment is by Uniko. It's this sentiment here, wishing you a happy birthday, many happy returns for the year ahead. And just for reference, although you probably don't need me to tell you that, Gelli Arts make the best gel printing plates. So this is a 6x6 square. If you're interested in how I've made this card, stay tuned and I'll show you. Okay, let's get started. You can see I have sped this video up because it was quite a long-winded process, and I just thought it makes it slightly easier if it's just a little bit quicker. So you can see I've started off here with my Distress Oxides. I've got two different colours to start with, a blue and a yellow, quite bright colours. But what I've done, you can see there on my gel mat, I've put some top, some bottom, left a gap in the middle, and you'll see as I'm going across with my brayer, kind of moving slightly up and slightly down, and that's what gets the merge of the colours, melds them together. I've then used my Distress spritzer and I've spritzed some water on there, big blobs, small blobs, and then I've just used the paper to soak up the colour basically. Let it rest on the jelly mat for a minute or two, don't pull it off too quickly, and you'll see you get a really nice effect. I have then obviously taken just any excess off, so just look at any parts that you're kind of not happy with. You can use some kitchen towel, some clean kitchen towel, just to blot that off, and in that scenario I would use clean kitchen towel rather than your mat that you wipe things, or your cloth that you wipe things, because obviously that can be quite dirty. What I've then done is I've just cleaned my brayer. Obviously it's good to clean things as you go along, even when you're making a video like this, I still do it because I think people like to see the whole process, and that's one thing you'll notice in my videos, I do pretty much show you everything. So I'm just cleaning up as I'm going along, cleaning up my brayer, and that's a nice big brayer, that one. I got it from Amazon. Really nice, and it's good size. So I've got my lovely blue to yellow fade, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp a little bit of the yellow, and I'm just going to do a few more blobs in the actual yellow, just to sort of stretch that colour across onto the blue a little bit. And you can see it just adds a slight more interest really. It kind of just takes it just that next level up. Then I've got my green, I've got a fairly light green, and actually I stamp that onto my cutting mat first. Then I blob it all over, but straight away I go in with my kitchen towel and lift it off. Otherwise I'm going to have a really vibrant green on that lovely fade that I've got at the moment. Blue and yellow and a hint of green. We don't want it too dominant. So it's all about the overall colour at the background, not the bright colour at the beginning. So I'm going to dry that off, and you can see it's ended up being quite a nice mix. Just pulling that yellow up to the top, the blue sits on top, it's quite nice, and then just that little bit of green, but don't forget to blot it, otherwise it'll be very, very dominant. And that's a good way of kind of taking the colour down a little bit. Just get in there straight away with your kitchen towel, lift it off, and the good thing about Distress Oxides is they all kind of blend together like that. Now at this point I decided I want a little bit more of the blue, so I went in with, I think, the blue just around the bottom and around the edges. I'm not sure if that was actually the blue or the green, to be honest. I think it was the green. But I decided that because the gel plate is slightly smaller than the card size I'm using, which is a 7-inch card, so I've designed that for a 7-inch card base, I just thought I want some sort of creeping out of the edges basically. So I just went around and did that. I've then gone in with my Distress spray, you can see, but I'm not using the spray, I'm just using the end to kind of splat. And again, just blotting with a clean piece of kitchen towel. And you'll see that just lifts a little bit more of the colour off. So just keep going, keep working until you've got that looking how you want. Don't panic and go straight away to make your card if you haven't got that base looking exactly how you wanted it. I wanted some blue in the yellow, some yellow in the blue, green in both, and greens around the edges, which is what I ended up with. It's worth spending the time to get that base element looking right, because that's obviously the foundation of the card, and that's the thing that people really notice, that whole background. You know, we're not using printed papers so much these days, we're creating our own backgrounds. They need to be interesting and they need to stand up on their own 2 feet. So there's my background. I've got that lovely blue to yellow fade, a bit of green. Now I'm going to go over this with my anti-static pad, because this has had a lot of water on it. It's probably got some grease and some fingerprints and things. And now I've got a stamp onto it. So I'm just going to go over with it first, just to kind of neutralise, and then try and avoid touching the main body of the card as much as possible, the base. Now I've got my rose stamp here. This is from the set that I showed you at the beginning. It's a nice set by All Create. They have some very funky modern stamps, which I love. So I stamped the rose, and I think I'd just go in and give it a second go just to make sure it's really dark. In fact, no, I don't actually. I just do it once. There we go. Dipping that into my ultra-fine clear embossed powder by Wow. That's the best I've found for setting things. Now, what I'm doing as well is I'm doing a second stamp of the rose head, because I'm going to lift that off the page slightly. And just do it as a second stamp, because I want to colour it vibrantly and I want it to sit away a little bit just so that it stands out. So I'm stamping that a second time, and I will then also heat emboss that, because I'm going to colour that with watercolours. So I definitely want that to be really, really well set. And just by sitting that rose, cutting it out and sitting it above the surface of the card base will really lift that up as an element and make it super, super noticeable. So I'm just cleaning off my stamp there, putting my stamping platform away. And now basically we've got all our different stamped elements. So I'm going to heat emboss the rose itself, just to set that completely. By heat embossing it, I'll also raise the edges slightly where I've stamped because of the embossing powder. That gives me an edge to colour up to. We're going to fussy cut this. We don't need to worry too much about the lines, which is good. And then I'll also just heat emboss the base as well. Now we've got our main image on the base. I will colour the circle in, and I will colour the leaves in, and the stem of the rose. But I'm not going to bother with the actual rose itself, because I'm going to stick the other one over the top of it. So I don't need to. Always heat emboss the front and the back. It just helps if you've just missed any little bits of powder. You don't want any little clumps of stuff that you've missed, so always good practice to do both. Now I'm going to pop this back into my stamping platform, because we also need to stamp the sentiment, and the sentiment is from a different set. It's a Uniko set. They have some lovely modern sentiments, which is good. So I'm just going to lay that down, just check on the lines on my stamping platform that it's level, and that's one good thing about these horizontal lines. You can always check if things are level. And then I'm just going to stamp that. Now I stamped that in a blue ink, not the same black as the actual rose, but this is a VersaFine blue. I just thought there's a lot of blue in this card, and it'll just make a little bit of difference. I know sometimes it's a bit jarring if you've got black ink stamped and blue, but in this scenario I just thought, yeah, I think that could work in blue. So I'm stamping that down. It's a nice sentiment, and I like the fact that it's got 2 different styles of text, so that's quite good. There we go, and I do just go in for that a second time just to make sure. I think it was the first time I'd used that sentiment actually, and I didn't remember to give it a spray and a clean, so it just needed a couple. And then I'm just going to obviously emboss that as well, same ultra fine Wow, and that will just give that a little bit of a lift from the page, and also make it slightly glossy so it stands out really well against that created background. Again, heat emboss the back. Always do the back and the front. Not only does it help with any powder you've missed, but also keeps things glossy. Now at this point I realised, I don't know why, but my phone camera had stopped working. So I do apologise that I've missed half the colouring of this rose. So you can see what I've done is I've laid down a general layer of pale orange. You can see from the bit sort of top right of the rose, I just blattered it all over the top just to get a layer of pale orange on there as a backdrop. And then I've gone in with a deeper orange, and then I've also got 2 different shades of purple as well. You can see them at the top of the screen there above my acrylic block. And basically I'm just going to go around, first of all, lay the orange down, then I'm going to go in the really dark bits, the kind of edges or the deep part of the petals that would be within the centre of the rose, just laying down the darker orange. And then once I've done that, I'm then going to go on the edges. Now these are those roses that you sometimes see in the shops where they're kind of orange but they go to a kind of purple on the edges and they look almost burnt. They're really beautiful, and I just thought I'm going to colour it like that. I wanted something vibrant that would stand out against that sort of bluey yellow background, and I thought a kind of orangey purple rose would work really well. And then I planned to colour the circle at the bottom in a similar sort of orangey effect basically. So you can see I'm just dotting and dabbing, so I'm laying down direct bits of colour with my pens. These are my Arteza watercolour pens. They're kind of a brush, work really well, and you can lay colour down with them, and then I just use my water brush to kind of pull that colour out and blend it. This is how you get a really nice nice blend, a nice fade. But on inanimate objects like this, a rose, you know, whilst it's a living thing, it kind of gives you, with these watercolour pens, a really varied look. You don't want flat colour, the kind of colour you get with pro markers or, you know, other alcohol markers. I just find these watercolour pens allow you to get more variation in the colour, more variation in the blend. Things just look more natural. I think they work well for humans, they work well for figures, sort of Christmas figures like gnomes and things like that, Father Christmases. But also on flowers and animals, I think they just work really well because you can get a really nice blend of colour, and it just looks, I think, more natural. So I'm working my way around the rose there. You can see, apologies there, I accidentally knocked the lamp and the camera. But I'm just working my way around. You can see lots of layers. This is how I colour. I'm not saying this is actually the world's best way of doing it, because I'm no expert, but I lay a colour down, I add another colour, I add another colour, I add another colour. Kind of do it in layers. If you go in one go and try and achieve that kind of look, that's where I think things go wrong. You have to build it up. And the other thing as well about building it up is you can always kind of take back one colour. If you go straight in with 4 colours, that's harder. So it's better to kind of start with your lighter colour, then add the darker, then add the darker, then add the darker. So you're kind of doing it in layers, really. Now you can see I've got my 2 oranges down. I'm going in now with a kind of a dark orange just right inside. As things dry, if you add another bit of layer, you tend to get more of that colour sitting on the top. I'm also drying it as well, infrequently, between kind of adding different colours as well. Once I'm happy with a colour, I might just go in and just give it a bit of a dry, because that does set it right well. So now I'm going in, this is the brightest of the purples, and I just wanted that really around the edges, just so that the leaves have got a kind of an orange to a purple fade about them. So I'm just going in on the edges of the leaves, and then you can see I'm just kind of blotting it almost with the water brush, not really blending in too well, because I don't want it to be a complete fade. I do want you to be able to see the purple, so I'm just dotting and dabbing along the actual purple itself. You can see I'm working fairly quickly. I know this is double speed, but you can see I'm not spending ages and ages on it. Don't spend too long, because you'll overthink it. Just do it. So, and you'll see the effect that you're achieving. Really, you'll notice whether you've got the right amount. You can keep adding, keep adding, keep adding. If you make a mistake, the good thing about these watercolor pens is you can go in with the water brush and kind of take it off as well. So it's pretty hard to screw this up, to be honest. So I'm giving it a good dry now. I think I've pretty much finished there. You can see we've got some nice vibrant colour. We've got orange, we've got the purple. As you look at it, you'll see little bits where there aren't blends, and you maybe have ended up with a hard line. Just go in with your water pen. You can tidy that up. Just dotting and dabbing really around the whole thing. This water pen is the one that I got with the set of Arteza pens, so it's about 4 years old. Yeah, you can see there, look at that nice blend, it's really nice. Now the hardest bit about this is fussy cutting. I hate fussy cutting. My friend Denise loves it, she's brilliant at it. I hate it, I kind of just about managed to do it. I don't really have the patience, but these little scissors are really good. These are the Tim Holtz ones from Tonic. They're really good. My friend Kate recommended these, and I bought them at the Stamperama event in York with her, actually. But they have been a godsend. I can't cope with larger scissors doing fussy cutting, and just kind of have to follow it around. Because we've got the rose stamped underneath, you can afford to go in slightly on the black border right on the outside edge, because you know that there's another black border sitting underneath it. So that's going to cover up any kind of slight misgivings if you get it slightly wrong. But it's quite a comfort blanket knowing that you're going to stick this on top of an existing stamped image. Also really good for things like insects with, they've got antennas, things like bees, where they've got little tiny legs. You don't need to worry about cutting those out, because you can stamp and then stick the the other stamped image on top, use the legs on the base layer, just do the body. So I'm just following the rows around. This wasn't actually too difficult to cut. It took me a little while to do, but it really wasn't that difficult. And it does just sitting it on the surface of the card, so it's only one little tiny layer high. I haven't lifted it up with foam pads or anything. Does really make it effective, and it does make it look not 3D, but I don't know, it somehow draws more attention to it by the fact that it's sitting slightly higher off the paper. So I'm just cutting my way around. Obviously any really tight corners, I'm kind of going in 2 different angles, but most of the time you'll see I'm keeping my scissors in much the same place, turning the project. This is how I've been told is the best way to do it, and I think it does work. So I'm just following all those lovely curves around and cutting that out. Now, because we've printed this or stamped it on white paper, you'll notice we've got white edges, and we don't want white edges because when we stick this onto our base layer, we'd have a white layer between the white and the black. So the next thing to do is grab a piece of scrap, grab a Sharpie, just a basic black Sharpie, and just go around the edges with that Sharpie. Just doing this, it blackens those white edges, and then when you mount it on top of the other stamped image, it will be a black edge on top of a black edge. It's a really simple thing to do. Some people don't do it. It doesn't look great. You end up with a white border between your sort of black stamped image, so I think that looks a bit naff, so I always take the time and just do this. I think it finishes it off. You're going to do it well, I say. You can lift it up like I'm doing here and just go round, but most of the time it just works drawing around it on the piece of paper. I actually went in on a few paces and just put a little bit more black on there, and I got a fine liner and just added a few more little pieces as well on that bottom leaf or bottom petal. But it ended up looking quite nice. Right, there we go. So there's our rose head. You can see it looks quite nice, quite effective. And then it's literally just going to stick down. Not mounting this on foam pads or anything, but just going to stick it down with glue. Now I've got my greens out at this point. I'm just going to green the stem of the rose, and I need to also colour the leaves and then decide what to do about the circle behind it. So I'm just laying a little bit of colour down on the centre of the leaves. It's sort of a mid-green, like an olive green almost. And then I'm just using my water brush again, just to pull that colour out. This is a watercolour paper, so it can take plenty of water. So I'm just laying the colour down in the middle and pulling it out to the edges. By doing that, you get that natural darkness of colour in the middle, where the actual sort of centre of the leaf would be, fading out to a paler colour on the outside edge. You can see that looks effective. Because we're in, obviously, blue and yellow together make green. Kind of ties everything together. We've got green leaves on a blue and yellow background with a kind of green effect. And similarly down the stem, obviously I've just laid the colour. And then I'm just going in again into the middle with the same green, just to give a little bit more definition to that centre line. And you can either blend that in or not. I think I did. But just as you add that more colour, it's going to get more definition in the middle. You just need to make sure that the leaves are visible clearly. There we go, that's the leaves pretty much done. There we go. So clean my brush, and then I think the next thing to do is to stick the rose in place. Look at the contrast there. You've got that lovely contrast of the orange and the purple against the blue. So I'm just using basic PVA glue that's dispensed into my little pinhead pot, and just using that to stick it down basically. Now sticking it down was interesting. I got it into the right place, and I went in with a piece of kitchen towel just so that made sure I didn't get any dirty fingerprints or anything on it. And you'll notice when I take the kitchen towel off, it actually moved. So I was really glad it hadn't actually completely stuck in place. There you go, and then I had to move it. How hilarious is that? I think I was okay because it was on top of the other stamped image, and the other stamped image had quite a lot of a shine on it. But anyway, it ended up in the right place, thank goodness, and you couldn't see any of the other image underneath. Now at this point, I've got myself some orange. So I'm put my little acrylic block on top of the rose there, you can see. Got a bit of orange, and I'm just going to go in on this circle. So I'm using the orange on the acrylic block, so I only want it very pale. So I've just put the water onto the acrylic block, and I'm just using water pen with a bit of that orange, just to just to slightly darken that circle. Now I'm just painting obviously around the leaves because we've already done those, and it's quite a subtle effect, but you'll see what I do in a second. So just laying down that base layer of colour. Now, with it wet, I've then gone around the edge with the actual bright orange. And you can see then I'm just pulling that out slightly. So this is almost implying it's like a glass ball. And I do the same at the top as well. Just give it a little bit of colour. Just top and bottom. Just gives it that kind of 3D effect. So you can see now we've got that kind of slight fade from the orange. And it just makes it stand out slightly. Clean up my acrylic block. Just give it all a heat. And that's pretty much our card base done. So you can see we've now got our rose in place. That looks nice. We've got a lovely contrast between the blue with the orange and the purple. Just give everything a bit of a heat now. And that's the body of our card done. That's pretty much everything. So all we need to do now is layer it and stick it onto a card base. So I've grabbed myself a piece of black paper. This is a relatively thin black paper that I use just for my layers. So I'm just going to double-sided tape around the edge of that panel and stick that down. This doesn't take long at all, but I'm just going all around. I mean, you could do this with glue, but I tend to use double-sided. It's just easier. Because this has been quite wet, I actually put several pieces of tape on there just to hold it absolutely flat. You don't want this to ride up or curve when people receive the card. It's bent into an odd shape. So I'm just using my tweezers there to take that double-sided tape off. And then I will stick that down. I'm just doing it by eye. I only wanted a relatively thin border on this one because it was quite a big panel onto the 7-inch card. And then I'll just use my my scalpel to cut that down. I mean, our card is pretty much done for today, which is good. So I've got my metal ruler and my craft scalpel. Always make sure you've got a decent blade and that it cuts well. Just cut that down. There we go. Just putting a black frame around anything does improve it. And then I've got my 7-inch card blank here in white. Same job with the double-sided tape. This time round with bunny ears though, so I'm going to just peel off one little end just so I've got a bit of wiggle room and can get it lined up correctly on the paper, because this is our actual layer down onto our card blank, so this needs to be right. A little bit less tape in the middle this time because otherwise it would stick immediately, but you'll notice I'm just peeling the edges away and then taking the centre one off. Just lay it loosely on the card blank and then firm it into place. And that's our card for today. So you can see we've got that lovely fade, we've got the stamped image, we've got the coloured rose as well, and the ball underneath, which just gives it a little bit of interest. I hope you've enjoyed watching that. If you have, maybe give me a thumbs up for this video, consider liking and subscribing to my channel, and then you'll hear about other videos. It's been a pleasure, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.